Hey, I'm going to talk about how to design a game with a cool, clever twist. That's a very broad topic, a little ambitious. I have done it enough times that I can probably concretely say something about it. Right from the start, I'm going to expand the topic to be even a little bit more enormous, because a twist, like, you think of the narrative structure of like a setup and then a spoiler reveal kind of thing, and that is the structure that I use for Corrupt. But I think trying to impose that narrative structure ab initio is going to get you into a trap already where you can't actually do it. Like in that game, that was the structure I ended up with from exploring the ideas, but I didn't start out going, oh, it's going to be Act 1 and Act 2 and a surprise reveal in the middle. But that's just how it ended up. Like the idea is certainly a twist, but like it could have happened that the twist made sense to put right at the start. Like, a twist is impactful in context, but the context doesn't have to be something that you establish in the first act. The context can be the world, people's experience of other games. Anyway, that's just to say it's a broad topic, but already the point I touched on there, that in the design of Corrupt, it was an explorative process, and I eventually found the right structure to put it in. So, in general, if you want to have ideas that feel impactful for their surprisingness and cleverness, you do have to take the time for this kind of explorative process, and have the flexibility in your process to research and adapt as you discover what actually works. And this really prevents a lot of games having this kind of depth, because the development processes that people fall into when they're working with large budgets, a larger team that needs to be coordinated, and when they have publishers breathing down their neck, gets in the way of creativity. So for me, having flexibility and taking the time to not release something until it's done, I just take that as a given. But with my experience a couple of years ago, trying to work with a publisher, not everyone takes that as a given, and some people can be very uncomfortable with a process that has dynamic changes on the way, that they like to have a design document at the start that tells what you're doing, not like a seed that's going to grow and flourish in different directions, but like a plan that then is like adhered to in a way that doesn't allow the chaos of creation. So that's, if you're working in that kind of context, your ability to do work that's interesting and worthwhile may be limited, but I think there are, if this need of the process is recognised, there are probably ways that you can adapt it. But I can't speak to that situation. that's a variety of situations, and so you'll have to work out those details. I know how I would approach it if I had $1 million budget or whatever, but I'm just going to go with the principles here, and you can work out the details for your situation. So if you have a cool idea that you think, yes, this is going to be the brilliant twist, like, throw it away. Your cool idea is kind of bad. I'm sorry. Mine are too. That's just the way of it. The really brilliant ideas are not the ones that you start out with as a direction to follow in. They're the ones that come up on the way. So if you're really convinced that you have a clever idea to start with, I hope you can kill it now, but it's okay if you can't. Just accept that it will have to die at some point along the way. Sometimes it's useful to have a guiding light that provides the scaffolding for the actual ideas to come. And sometimes once the clever idea has died, it can come back in a transformed form and actually be good. So, like, the ideas aren't bad, but it's generally not going to work to have a clever idea independent of the actual craft and then follow through on that in the craft. Inspiration, this is a quote from Pablo Picasso, inspiration finds you working. Like it's a bit of a cliche now, it's often quoted, but it's genuinely true. The cool stuff comes when you're in the medium, you're doing stuff. And so having said that, you have to love what you're doing. You have to love the core, the base, the fundamentals, not just the glitzy, exciting idea that comes on top. So again, the example of Corrupt. For a lot of people, the point of that game was the twist that comes in the second act. And you see people posting on social media saying, you have to play it until the twist. And some people were not enjoying the game before that point and pushed through the twist and like, okay, that's cool, I guess, but then they don't finish it because they've seen what's there. Like the people who it was like really for, who enjoyed it, were people who enjoyed what there was to start with, and then found that how it changed sheds new light on that. If you don't like what it starts with, like, why are you going to like having new light shed on it? And for me making it, like I was making with love a cute little adventure game. I wasn't treating what comes first as merely in service of the brilliant thing that happens later. It's really cared for and nurtured in itself, and there were many other directions it could have ended up taking than how it did. But yeah, love the work, love the materials, love the fundamentals. If all you care about is putting some icing on top, then you're not going to have something that works as a complete whole. So there's a bunch of strategies I kind of have for how to think of a twisty idea. And the first one I won't spend too long because I've talked about it several times before. Turn bugs into features. So the canonical example is I made this game title. It's a quick jam game made in a day, little adventure game. It had a bug in it. The bug was more interesting than the game itself, and I made a sequel called Game Title Lost Levels, in which I started with that bug and then got wilder places from there, which is very good. But yeah, so I've talked a bit about that before. I'll link a talk I did at Amaze, I think, where I talked about that. But yeah, so the concept I want to draw out here is more than bugs specifically. Like, bugs are great. Bugs are also terrible, but kind of the more general concept is implementation details matter. The specific bugs that come up are not part of the original concept that you have. They are dependent on how you actually put it into the computer. And yeah, so that when those kind of situations happen where a bug is fruitful, you are having a dialogue with the work. You had an idea, you tried to make the idea was broken in various ways, and the ways in which it's broken lead you forward into new ideas. That's more general than just bugs. That's just like design, finding out your ideas don't work, but you've got a structure that you've built around them which can be used for something. It's having balance issues in a game where balance matters, which is most of them in a broad enough perspective. Once you're making something, it talks back to you in a sense, and the ideas that come are bigger than what you could have just mentally invented. So yeah, the implementation details matter, and not just for problems that come up, but for in any particular piece of software, there's as I talked about in the Amaze talk, but I'll go into that again. There is a natural grain to it. There are the types of additions that are easy to add. Maybe you have a nice weapon system with like statistics and maybe scripting language or whatever, and it becomes easy to add 100 different weapons. So you're probably going to add 100 different weapons now that you have that. Whereas another type of idea of like adding a mode that has a different visual perspective or something, it's going to take 6 weeks extra of development time to make it work. And so you're not going to add 100 of those. You still probably want to do some of those ideas that are difficult to push through, but just by basic numbers, you're not going to do as many of them as the ones that become easy. And like personally, I like to be a bit careful of the ones that are easy, because yes, you can add 600 different weapons, but like at that point they're not, unless you're doing something particularly clever, which you can, they're not meaningfully distinguished from each other. So follow the grain of what's easy to put in for trying things, but be aware of that grain. And if it's making something too easy, so you're doing lots of it and it isn't meaningful anymore, then you do need to go against it. And sometimes it is exciting to go against it. Of course, some things are impossible, and that's a limitation we have to work with. So yeah, bugs into features, implementation detail matters, but more generally, treat the medium as a material, as having its you know, if you're carving wood, like the grain and the structure of the wood is obviously like a material constraint. Computers, it's like we can kind of pretend that it's a mathematical abstraction and it doesn't have material constraints, but obviously it does. And when it comes time to do a practical implementation, it matters. So get to the point where it matters as soon as possible, so that you can actually wrestle with it and have the inspiration that comes out of that. In a way, I think that's a distinction between inspiration and ideas. Yeah. So. Yeah, and when you look back on the ideas, it can seem like you could have come up with this idea completely mentally without wrestling with the material, but you didn't. The idea you came up with mentally turned out to be bad, turned out to be a starting point but not actually work. And then this other idea is what you came up with from the material, from the bugs. And it's good, it actually works. Someone else just looking at the end product could imagine that you just had an idea and step by step manifested it, and there you go. But from the inside, you know that the actual good inspiration came out of the complicated parts of the process. And while the player, the external viewer, might get the impression that it could have just been a mental idea that was then immaculately manifested, they do feel, like, at some unconscious level, they feel the difference between this is kind of weird and philosophical and doesn't necessarily seem like it should be true, but ideas are path dependent. If you have an idea that came from a bug and you turn it into a feature, it will, no matter how much you just make that righteously a feature, and so I've sometimes themed it as a glitch with Rainbow Static and stuff to play that up. But even if you completely play it straight, it will taste a bit spicy, you know, the fact that it came from there, and even though abstractly it's just a rule, You could have thought of it. You didn't. It came from the bug. The fact that it came from a bug gives it a flavour when it fits into other people's minds. That an idea that just comes out of your mind doesn't have. And similarly, not just with bugs, with any inspirations that come from material properties of the medium, they taste differently. Right, like this doesn't quite make sense, but I assert it. Anyway, okay. Material properties of medium. The other big idea I want to say as a source for inspiration is to work with the concept of inversion. This is, again, very broad. You take a rule that you have in your game and you flip it backwards. See what happens. So, example. In my game Helix, the basic combat rule is that you control a ship, there's enemies coming on the screen. You try not to crash into the enemies. Crashing into an enemy kills you. You attack them by drawing a circle around them. Act 2, in comes an enemy that starts drawing a circle around you. If it completes that circle, you die. So it's using your attack against you. How do you kill it? You crash into it. So it's flipped the combat rule from circle and avoid to don't avoid and avoid being circled. And that's smart. That's a cool idea. That's kind of deep. Yeah. So you could look at this more generally. Like, what if take any game that has a combat system in it. What if instead of your attacks dealing damage, you take the damage? Like, a lot of the time that's just ridiculous and it won't work, but like you can try it and see where it goes. And philosophically, like it kind of makes a statement, right? Aggression only hurts the one who not only, but like aggression fundamentally hurts the person who does the aggression. Like that's a true fact about the world, and a game that flips aggressive acts to directly in the game mechanics hurt the one who's attacking is in some sense expressing that meaningful concept. That's possibly cool. If it works, it's cool. Yeah, some other examples of this kind of thing. In NetHack and a lot of roguelikes, I'm not sure where on the branch was the first to do it, but definitely by NetHack it happened, in Rogue it was. Rogue had a little bit. I'll get to that. So in NetHack, you find items in the dungeon, like magic wands and swords and stuff. There are other creatures walking around the dungeon which are mostly aggressive and fight you. Those creatures can also pick up the items and use them against you. So a low-level enemy, like a goblin, might find a wand of death, which instantly kills anything that's shot at, and shoot at you and you instantly die. That's a classic NetHack interaction. In Rogue, wands were only usable by the player. So at some point in that pedigree, someone had the idea to flip that round and say enemies can use the same things that the player can use. that's just deep on so many levels. It makes the world feel more verisimilitude, because like you are a thing like the other creatures in the world. The things that you interact with, the ways you interact with them, the other creatures in the world can do the same. It leads to interesting and surprising encounters like that. And yeah, it's just quite interesting. So that in my game Imbroglio, I had the player construct a deck of weapons which are tied to locations on the grid, and the various characters have different abilities and curses, impedances. And the last character has the affliction enemies use weapons. So that's the classic NetHack inversion. And yeah, I brought that in as a inversion for the last character. Like, obviously that's talking about the material limitations of the medium. When you allow this, it's a lot of programming. So like, be aware. But it's neat. It's maybe ridiculous that I did all that work for just one character among 16. Like, NetHack, it makes a lot more sense. It's the whole game. So, I just took how long it took to make the game and how it wanted to be. Anyway, yeah, so that's not a complete inversion, because enemies use weapons but you still use them. So when I say try inversions like this, it's a very broad concept again. Like, it's so like a perfect inversion would be like, you've been using weapons and the enemies haven't. Now the enemies use weapons and you don't. Like, in the case of Imbroglio, that wouldn't be a very interesting game, and I think in the case of NetHack as well. But there's potentially a situation where that's interesting. It's still like, sometimes it makes sense to go both ways, and that often suggests balances. Like, games generally want some amount of balancing in them, so that there isn't just one option that makes irrelevant all the other options, because it's always better. So for example, you could have a cursed sword that heals you when you do damage with it. That's very good. You would probably find when balancing that sword that's quite a strong effect, and it might need a counterbalancing factor to just make it fit in a harmonious way into the game. So you could say you heal by dealing damage, but you don't heal from potions or whatever the regular methods of healing are. And so like that, right? Seeing it as an ability that is not just adding something, but it is. Yeah, you could also balance it by saying it costs 100 extra pieces of gold, or using this sword costs a mana point to hit with it. Like, I mean, I've done those things in my designs. They're fine, but having the cost to it be an inversion of the effect, right? That feels more deep and like suggests like narrative interpretations and so on, but in a way that it just costs more money doesn't. Yeah, so like a vampire sword, you deal damage by attacking, you heal by attacking, but you don't heal any other way. That's interesting. Other ways you could invert it, perhaps you heal by attacking, but you don't deal damage, right? Like it's instead of dealing damage, it heals you when you hit with it. Like that's probably less likely to work, but run with it and see what you get. Yeah. Right, like you'd be switching between your damage sword and your healing sword, and when you think the enemies, yeah, like there'd be interesting decisions to happen around that. You could do it. Yeah, so the kind of the more general thing here is use resources in different ways. Like maybe you have a spell that you cast with your hit points instead of your mana, but like specifically having it be an inversion tends to make it feel meatier. Like a character that casts spells with their hit points instead of their mana, and their mana absorbs attacks, right? Like, but that's probably, like, if you're making an RPG kind of game, that's probably just a balanced character you can just put in today. That will take 5 minutes to implement, right? That's cool. So resources can be inverted, but what else? Attacks can be inverted. What else? Roles can be inverted. I went to a talk at a game design conference once where the speaker was furious at Magic the Gathering for having abdicated part of the job of a game designer and leaving some of the game design to the players. I was like, dude, that's the brilliance of it, right? Like, Magic's such a establishment at this point that it's easy to forget how weird and provocative the concepts are. But yeah, like turning the players into game designers. Like, you've got the pieces, but we haven't put them together in a deck for you. You have to do it yourself. That's obviously a $1 billion idea, it turned out. Yeah, putting the player in the role of the designer, cool. English Country Tune, Stephen Labelle's game before Steven's Sausage Roll, had a few levels where, so it was mostly a kind of a 3D soccer bun. But it had some levels where instead of moving the guy on the grid, you control it with the level editor. You have to... It gives you the level editor that he's used to make the other levels and say, now you make a level that fits this constraint. That's super clever. Stephen, brilliant, and Yeah. Flipping roles with players and enemies, like there was that Dungeon Keeper game back in the 90s or so on, whatever it was, which like, it was an exciting concept that you've played these RPGs where the hero goes into a dungeon and now you be the monsters, you build the dungeon, right? That's kind of basically a tower defense RTS kind of thing, but like exciting because of the way it was framed as an inversion. And let's be clear, I like a lot of making a twist cool and exciting, making something feel like a inversion rather than just a balanced resource exchange is the framing. Yeah, like you know, some philosophical insights are very mundane if you just look at them in words, but if you arrive at them after a meditative retreat or whatever, like you've put yourself into the frame of mind to be wowed by a thing that's kind of obviously true. Yeah, so that framing matters. Yeah, I'll go off on a little tangent. It's not really a tangent, but it's outside of video games. So for several years, not so much these days because I'm busy with children, but when I get time. But for several years I was quite into the hobby of partner dancing, and so generally in a partner dance you have two people, usually in physical contact, moving together. It's a form of play. I find it difficult to transfer inspirations from that realm of play to video game play because they're so far apart. Play is an enormous concept, but when I'm able to take an insight across from one side to the other, I find it quite fruitful. But it's a challenging domain transfer. Anyway, so you have two people interacting in a physical way, and how does it work? What are the rules governing interaction? And one rule set that a lot of people use is lead and follow, which is that movements are initiated in one body and the other body responds and goes with them. And you can do a lot of beautiful movements with this framework. This isn't the only framework. It's a particular way of approaching it. But it casts the players, the dancers, in these two roles of one is leading and one is following. And the way some groups of people who do partner dancing assign these roles is by gender. This is a thing that's been happening. So they'll say that this person is male, so this person goes into the role of being the leader in this play that we're doing, and this person is female, and so they right, that's a concept that some people teach. Some people call it traditional. That is, like, it's certainly a tradition that exists, but this is a topic I could talk on for another hour, so I won't go too deep into that. But it's calling one particular assignment of gender roles traditional is a political claim and has limited historical validity. Like it can be historically accurate to certain times and places, but the past is enormous and diverse, and people have done so much stuff. So yeah, this lead and follow role concept is a particular framework that some people are practicing, some people are teaching, and I think teaching is actually significant there. It's not necessarily what people are doing when the dancers are being developed within a culture of dance. But then when people go, oh, this is a dance people are doing, we will teach people how to do it. Then they start imposing more frameworks on it just to try and have an effective pedagogy. They're like, well, the man's doing this and the woman's doing this, so we'll say this is the man's role and this is the woman's role, and then we'll try and describe physical techniques to... Anyway. So this is a dangerous tangent to get on, but the fact is, at present, in a lot of communities where people are practicing and teaching partner dance, this is a framework that is being taught and practiced. And I was fortunate to first learn in a community that was exploring that as one concept among many rather than the one true way. I've since then lived in different countries and dance in communities where they have a more rigid concept, and that puts me in the role of provocateur, which I will do, but yeah, so that's... I would rather everyone just be chill and everyone dance with everyone and just be fine and normal, but yeah, when I've been in a community where people have this rigid idea, then in that context, doing differently is impactful. I will go up to a man and ask him if he wants to dance, and in a normal context where people are just being normal, he will say yes or no, and we'll have a dance or not. In a context where people are stuck in some weird trap, like sometimes people just get very upset, why are you asking me? I'm a man and you're a man, and it challenges them and it provokes them, and they have to examine why are they upset about that? Is it because dancing is a sexual activity? It can be in this social environment. It's not. do all the women that you're dancing with agree with you sexualizing it in this way? And that's yeah, like these kinds of questions just like instantly hit them, and like in the moment of breaking out of the role that they've been taught. Yeah, and so that's one example. When sometimes when I've been dancing with a woman, like I create space for their that if they want to go into the leading role, they could. Like I can lead, I can follow, I can just dance, I can connect a dozen different ways, and I allow the possibility of that. And one thing that sometimes happens is that they take that opportunity and they dance in the leading role, and we just have a fun dance that way. And sometimes we switch back and forth. Like this can be just like a normal fun dance. Another thing that sometimes happens is something very powerful. I've sometimes been dancing with someone who's just been like weeping, like really deeply emotionally impacted by feeling in their body that these rigid roles that some people try to impose as traditional can be broken out of. And yeah, it's so that this particular like male dominance gender role concept is like there's a lot of harm been done by that, and a lot of feelings people are carrying around it. And in a context of play, we can symbolically keep reiterating the harmful power structures of the world, or we can explore different relationships. We can play with reversing the power dynamics of the world, but like that's not the goal. The goal is to break down the power dynamics, not to put someone else in power. But a step towards that goal can be to play with reversals. So, and sometimes I can just talk over the planet. Sometimes it just really. It's a bit annoying that the forest is in the flight path. I know why they put the flight path over the forest. Like there's people here, but yeah. Sometimes dancing with Tara, my wife. We usually dance in a way that we're equal. We both have a voice. We can either of us use the techniques of leading and following at a moment in the dance. If we choose to, we can also use other techniques that are not based on that framework. And like these are not my ideas. I'm not a professional dancer. This is all stuff that I've learnt from a variety of wonderful teachers who do the work of developing and disseminating different approaches. So we dance in this way, and sometimes if we're dancing in a public place, like if there's someone to music in the street, like we'll sometimes just have a little dance to it. And the fact that we're using these techniques for having a way of playing dance that is equal rather than a power relationship. It can be, people see it. Like if you're in a public place, people seeing like people people will sometimes come up to us and just be like, wow, I don't know what that was that you were doing differently from other people I've seen partner dancing, but there's something that they don't have the technical framework to say, oh, they use this roll technique and then they swap to this roll technique. Like they just feel that there's something that is disruptive to something in the authoritarian social order. They feel it. You don't need to formally understand the techniques. It is like fundamentally just physical techniques, but it does something that has a social effect. So I don't know if a video game can necessarily do something as socially impactful as breaking down this authoritarian gender binary concept, but like I don't see why not. Like games can do lots of things. So inversions, like some years ago someone posted on, back when Twitter was the thing, a list of like an article about queer games and queering games, and they listed some of my games, and I wrote them like, hey, like you've put my game in this list of queer games. I'm a straight married man. Like I respect the queer games community. I have a lot of friends among that community. I don't want to take limelight away from them. Like it just felt weird. And yeah, they said that, I mean, what they were using queer in like a academic queering kind of way, as like sort of subverting and breaking down the old order, rather than like specifically about who you're having sex with. And I mean, like, that it kind of makes sense that like what people get out of a person's art is not particularly related to who that person had sex with. Yeah, like wow, that's a topic. Like, yes, it also makes sense that if people were doing like bad stuff, then you might find it harder to appreciate their art. I believe every person is enormous and deep and magical and at some level fundamentally good. Yes, even that person you're thinking about, like they were a baby, they came into this world as a pure angelic being, and yeah, stuff has happened that's got layered on top of that, and you can't see it anymore. But yeah, so I don't believe in writing off everything about a person just because they did some things that are unacceptable. I understand if you do want to not be interacting with a person, or not feeling like you can appreciate their art, and certainly don't want money going towards them. But yeah, it's a complicated topic, and I didn't expect to veer into it here, but here we go. But yeah, like where I try to get to in my games is absolutely a breakdown of evil power structures. Like, that's... I don't delude myself that the art can do that on its own, but the art we make absolutely has a social impact, and it doesn't have to be explicitly in, like, this is Trump Killer 2000, like, I don't, that kind of, like, blatant political message, like, some people do it, you know, more industrious games are a powerful, important work, and I respect that. It's not my style. But I hope that my work does have some kind of positive social impact without being explicit. Like, people engage with it, it affects their thoughts and feelings, that ripples out into the world. I genuinely believe that good can happen from this, and yeah, it's so yeah. Like, I felt weird about being assigned, like, labelled as queer games then, but yeah, there was, I can't even remember who that was now, it was years ago. But yeah, like there's... Yeah, I reject a lot of the kind of direct, transparent ways of doing this. Like people go, oh, why are all these games so competitive? We're going to make a cooperative game. And like there are plenty of cooperative games and they're great. Some of them, there's absolutely a trap that a lot of cooperative games fall into, where they, like one person could play them solo, and there's nothing structurally in the game that prevents, if a group are playing them, one person dominating over the others. So like Hanabi is great for breaking that, and Space Team is great. It does that with... I will, yeah. I have another point that I want to make, and this kind of circles into it. So Hanabi does it by limiting information, even though you're on the same team. That's Bridge does this as well. Like it's a classic game thing. And Space Team and the board game that's similar do it with time limits. Yeah. So a concept I find quite fruitful for game ideas, again it's a kind of inversion, is to take a existing structure and look at something that's random in it and turn the random thing into a choice, or look at a choice in it and turn the choice random. In all games there's a continuum between choice and randomness. Like so you could argue that some games are completely games of skill, that there's no random element. I don't really endorse that view, because even if there's nothing formally in the structure of the game, like maybe your tummy rumbles, maybe you randomly think of your dead grandfather and you're sad, and then that throws you off your game, you know? Like we live in a world with chaotic interacting variables, so like even if a formal system of the game has no explicitly random elements, like we are dealing with randomness. And then on the other end of the spectrum of fully random, like you could say if it's fully random, if there's no choices the player's making, then it's not really a game. But like people play these, right? Like there's a choice to play or not. There's a choice of the interpretation that you place on it. I mean, like a lot of games of pure chance are used as divination tools, and what's happening in divination is that the random input is giving you something to reflect on. So yeah, there's no such thing as pure choice or pure chance. All games are some mush of the two. Yeah, so I made the game Glitch Tank. It's a game about controlling a tank that drives around and shoots the other tank. It's a simple two-player game, but the twist, you can't fully control your tank. So I took the choice of move, turn or shoot, and I made it not all the way random, but semi-random. It's a limited hand of cards for what you can do. So that's a general approach that's interesting. Take a game with a random element, like a dice game. What if you could, instead of rolling a die, you just pick the number? a lot of games that use dice, you would just pick the largest number all the time. So maybe that's not a choice. If there's a game where it's an interesting choice to choose a number, then that's a cool and deep game. So run with that. But if you pick the biggest number all the time, then okay, you haven't made it a choice. But still, so like a lot of roguelikes and RPGs roll dice for damage. What if you just did max damage all the time? Right? That's now a highly tactical game. Every hit's going to do maximum damage, so positioning suddenly matters a lot. You can't get through a fight making mistakes because you got lucky and had some good rolls and the enemy had some low rolls. Like, all the rolls are the best rolls, so you know that's that's bro-like. Like, yeah, the subgenre of roguelikes that people have been calling bro-likes has generally been low variance in attack damage. That's one of the things I've run with, and that's inspired other people. That's taking a random element and making it a constant. You can do that as well. So take a random element, make it a constant or a choice. A card game, what if you, instead of picking a random card from the deck, you could pick any card you chose from the deck? Mostly that would be terrible. What other changes would you need to make to the game for that to not be terrible? In 868 Hack, one of the main choices in the game is choosing what progs you have, building up your spellbook basically, and one of the curses, enemy power-ups I put on that was global encryption. All the progs you can choose from are just question marks, so you don't choose what you get in your spellbook, and that's a fundamental choice of the game. I take it away, there's still a game there, and it's really an interesting thing to examine. Like, even though you don't have the choice of what prog to collect because it's encrypted, what choices do you still have around it when the main choice is gone? You still have a choice of when you pick one up. You still have a choice of what resources you're picking up. So I didn't completely blind you. You have the choice of what resources you're picking up with it. You have the choice of when you're just going to stop picking more up, stop taking that risk, and just work with what you've got. And taking the central choice away shifts focus to all the things around it which were choices that you were making all the time, but they seemed minor compared to what. You don't choose what, suddenly those are the major choices. 868 Back has some more things in this kind of vein. Random elements made choice and chosen elements made random, more constant. Yeah. More detail on that later. Another kind of inversion. Turn a curse into a blessing, or a blessing into a curse. Like, take an ability that an enemy has and give it to the player, or so 868 Hack and Syncopash and Slice and Dice have this system of blessings and curses, that there are rule modifiers that you can have applied to the games that take the base game and say, like, this enemy now has a ranged attack, or this enemy can teleport, or I just mentioned global encryption. Progs are, until you collect them, they're just question marks. So take one of these that's a negative effect, and what if you flip it around to a positive effect? Like, where there's a minus, turn it into a plus, or when it says, like, do a logical negation. It says everything except this, say only within this. So, what's an example? Like, say enemies do +1 damage when they're on a red cell. You could flip that around to enemies take +1 damage when they're on a red cell, or enemies do -1 damage when they're on a red cell, or the player does +1 damage when they're on a red cell, or right. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do a negation. So just from one possibility, like it can branch off into a lot of options. That's a good source of ideation. And yeah, in designing 868 back, some of the ideas I've had that I've started working with as an enemy thing, I've eventually turned over to being for the player, and that's been the form that it's harmoniously worked within the game. Yeah, so it can be the mid-game twist thing where something is a thing that the enemies have and then you get it, like that. That's a good way to set it up. But it can also be just in design and grappling with the materials. This thing wasn't really working as an enemy thing, even though it seemed initially like it was an enemy thing, and eventually you realize it could be a player thing. And again, ideas can be path dependent. Like, you could have thought of that as a thing for the player first off without spending the time trying to make it work as an enemy thing. I didn't. You didn't. You weren't ever going to think of that. Even though it was an idea that was just like perfectly possibly in the space you could think of, you were never going to think of that without trying it on the other side first. And even though the player never got to see it on the other side, it will feel different to them than an idea that you originally conceived of as a boon for the player. It's always going to have a slight bitter taste, like, oh, this item is good, like it's strong, like I like to use it, but it has something about it that the other ones don't have. And the thing about it is that it used to be on the other team. Like, you can show that to the player. You can narratively do a team change. That's fun. But even if you don't show it, it kind of comes through. Like, I can't explain the mechanism for that. It doesn't necessarily seem to make sense, but it's. Yeah, so whew, yeah, I'm not surprised that this got long, but what can I sum up? Forget your clever idea that you started with. It's going to have to die. Just accept that. Work with the medium. Love what you're doing. Love the untwisted part before the twistiness comes. Have the flexibility in your process so that when something comes up, then you can run with it. Bugs into features, and more generally the material realities of the medium affecting the design. Inversions, swapping two resources, swapping roles, swapping positions, swapping randomness for choice or for constants. disrupting the social order. Yeah, take time. Yeah, 868 back is coming along really well, and some cool dramatic ideas have come up in the process. I had been saying mid this year. I'm now saying late this year because some of the ideas that come up just make everything take longer. Like there's some that this has to interact with everything else, and so it's hard work, but like yeah, some of these ideas that come up in the middle feel like when you look at the finished product, you think this was the point all along. Like with Corrupt, the twist. Like the whole one way of reading it is that the whole point of it was this idea, but that doesn't mean that that idea was there at the start. To me, it feels like, oh yeah, this is the point. This is what I was getting at. But I had to be working and set up the process, set up the environment for that inspiration to be possible, for the things that make it worth it to be able to be thought of, because they can't just be mentally thought of. They come as you make